Welcome to the BXG podcast, the podcast where pop culture and nerd culture meet at the nexus of the universe and are melded as seamlessly as lightsaber duels and teenage superheroes. I am one of your hosts, the Alpha Donut Guy, Bretton Bestwick, alongside my co-host, Gregory Filson. Greg, how are you?
I'm doing all right. It's NBA draft night. Used to be one of my favorite nights. People used to quiz me on like my draft knowledge because I used to know just every single pick, and even if there are trades or things like that. I'm not that well versed in it now after you actually have jobs and stuff like that, you and other like things happening in your life. But it is one of my favorite nights still. I still love watching it. I love criticizing it. I love how everyone's an expert in any draft, but NBA draft's always funny to me. Particularly tonight, I think Duke's going to have 5 people picked in the top in the first round, and they didn't beat North Carolina, who will have no one picked in the first round, and it just makes me full of joy because it's just Krzyzewski going out on bottom makes me happy. So feeling good about that. Duke having players go to the NBA draft has no impact on me in the college realm, and it just makes me laugh. So Paolo Banchero is going to be a bust, and that'll be funny too. How are you doing, Brendan?
I think that the biggest bust in this draft is Chet Holmgren, but that's just me.
I don't know. I mean, like, everyone plays small now, so it's hard to say. I mean, he doesn't need to play. Small. He doesn't need to play inside though. He can just shoot outside, which is what he did in college. And
I see him as a bust. He looks like
maybe,
a wet,
but I think
looks like a wet spaghetti.
Did nothing against North Carolina. Whenever they would
Gonzaga doesn't play anybody. Like they play some.
I'm not disagreeing with. I'm not saying I'm not disagreeing, but if Banchero is a bust at 1, that's a bigger bust than Chet Holmgren at 2.
Sure. Yeah.
They could both be bust. It wouldn't shock me. I did read an article about Chet Holmgren in the newest Sports Illustrated. That was just good.
I don't understand how Smith wasn't the first pick. I just don't.
I don't understand either. I'm not, it's one of those weird things where like, we're not in those rooms, and like, I be cool to be in those rooms. That'd be fun. Yeah. But I also I don't necessarily believe that they understand talent a lot of times either. I mean, you've seen how many teams pick bad picks. Like they go
Anthony
over and over
Bennett.
again. Well, I mean, you can just go throughout time. I mean, Anthony Bennett's definitely a bad example, but there's like the pick. I saw somebody today. It was like the team that picked before like Klay Thompson was picked, and I think it was Sacramento. Sure. Kept picking ahead of just these players that were awesome, and it's just like you don't know what's going to happen. Like no one thought Klay Thompson was going to be the Klay Thompson that we have, which it's just one of those things. But there, we go back in time. We'll go, maybe the weirdest one is just Sam Bowie getting picked ahead of Michael Jordan. Yeah, Hakeem Olajuwon, definitely someone that should have went first at that time, but Michael Jordan, it's just crazy to me. But then again, it's just that puts that chip on the shoulder.
Just think of even like Darko.
Yeah,
Darko went number 2 ahead of Melo and Dwayne Wade and Bosch.
Sure,
several
and Kobe
other guys.
went 15th.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just, 15. It's one of those things, but I do miss the days where people were like, they say they have a chip on their shoulder or something, but I miss the days where people actually are pissed. Like Kobe was pissed that he went 15th. And that's what like drove him to his success. I wonder if he would have got picked higher, if he actually becomes the Kobe that we know, that we grew up with. I don't know. You just don't know. It's just like, I think that extra level of like, oh, I went 15th in the draft and like these bums were ahead of me. I mean, there were some good players in that draft, but Kobe obviously ends up being the best player. But I digress. I like all draft nights. I think the NBA to me is the best because it's only one round. The first, it's 2 rounds, and the first round is really the only one you care about.
Really, only the first 15.
The MLB draft is like 75 rounds, and we don't know most of these people unless you watch college baseball. You might know half the people that get drafted. You get JUCO, you get high school kids. Like I mean, I used to be super into the MLB draft and knew a lot of the picks. I like weird how much I was into that, but that was also something I thought was going to be my career, was covering baseball. So, and then the NFL draft is just, you watch the first round, maybe. I like the first round, but I don't ever watch anything past that.
I don't watch any drafts anymore. I just don't have time.
It's good background for me. It's good background for me.
I don't have time for that stuff. I have like a little bit of a throat thing going on, so my voice is like maybe a little bit sexier.
There
But
you go. That's the way to look at it.
yeah. But other than that, shaking hands and kissing babies, or was it shaking babies and kissing hands?
Either way, it works.
Right. So, we have a bit of an interesting show. We've got Obi-Wan, Miss Marvel, the Netflix original Spiderhead, and then a solo review that Greg is going to be doing. I'm just going to sit back. I'm not going to say anything. He's going to read off a script that he wrote.
Yep.
And he's going to do a solo review of Cha Cha Real Smooth because I fell asleep on the night that I planned to watch that. And I think
it happens.
It may have put me to sleep anyway. But I think the best place to start for this particular week is with the series finale of Obi-Wan Kenobi episode 6, in which we get Obi-Wan and the rest of the resistance fleeing from an Imperial Star Destroyer. Obi-Wan realizes that he has to go face Vader to give them a chance to survive. So he lands. Vader follows him. They have an epic duel. Meanwhile, back on Tatooine, because we had to squeeze that in somehow, obviously.
We got to.
Third sister is at the Lars farmstead with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru as they try to fend her off long enough for young Luke Skywalker to make his way to safety. In the end, everything works out as we knew that it would, because we've seen the movies that come after this. But that I don't think stopped from some of the excellent things that happened in this episode. So your thoughts on Obi-Wan Kenobi episode 6?
I mean, it was one of those things where, like you said, we knew we were getting into it for the most part. And I saw some reviews. I always read reviews after I watch it. And I actually watched it today and not yesterday. I decided to watch it a little more fresher. And I was happy I did, so I wouldn't have that day lag or whatever. But I read reviews after I watched it, and there was like a lot of negative reviews, not like negative, but just anti-positive, maybe is the way I would say it.
I believe that's negative.
But it's not fully negative. It's like, you know what I mean? It's not fully negative. It was just like, oh, it is what it is. And like, Disney doesn't know how to handle this. And it's like, but no one knows how to handle this. George Lucas didn't know how to handle this, and that's the thing is, it's when you take something that was so good and so pure in its moment, the first 3 movies, 4, 5, and 6.
The first 3 movies, 4, 5, and 6.
It's weird to say. It's always weird to say. And I always, but like to go and watch this, and maybe I'm just like someone that appreciates nostalgia, and I think we all appreciate nostalgia, actually. If we're going to really get into that's why it's a thing. Nostalgia is only a thing because we want it to be a thing. I like enjoyed this episode quite a bit. I felt feels with it, and with no spoilers and stuff. But when Princess Leia is in her little princess suit, but she has her holster on, and it's just like, it gets you, like, it just, and whether you like her, I like her in this show. I really do. Like, the little girl's just got a little precociousness to it. I like it because that's, to me, Leia is a little precocious anyhow. It was just something about it, just to have the fights and, to see the lightsabers and to see all this stuff, to see Darth Vader, which, as much as we kind of like downplay, like seeing, certain things in the movies with Luke Skywalker or whatever, it's like, but when we see Luke Skywalker in the TV shows, it's different because he's just kicking ass and he's not old, and it's a whole different thing. And to see the same with like Darth Vader, it's just like that transition where you finally see that it's no longer Anakin Skywalker, it is Darth Vader, and he makes this proclamation about it. It's, to me, it was just what I think this, if we're going to keep doing this, which I think we're going to keep doing this, it needed. I don't think having a gap being bridged with something like this is a bad thing. I really like it. Ewan McGregor is awesome as Obi-Wan. I mean, it's just like one of those things where he's so good that I don't mind any of this. And I like the nostalgia. I like feeling those feels of those things because those movies, I mean, even if you're not a Star Wars nerd, you know, and I hate to throw the word nerd around, but even if you're not like a Star Wars, those movies are still great. And they still mean something to you in some way, whether you watched them with your parents or watched them with your friends. And I think this is what that show did for me. You know, was it a great show? I don't think so. But was it a good show that made me enjoy Star Wars again? Yes, it definitely did, in a different way, in an actual Star Wars universe where people we know and appreciate are in
it. I think that this episode delivered on everything that built up to this point. And like you said, the final showdown, it was like heart pumping, you know, heart pounding throughout. And I think that it elicits a feeling that can't be replicated by anything other than this. And what I mean by that is The Mandalorian's great. And it, as a show, it's superior to this, I would say.
I would agree.
But there's nothing that they can do that will elicit the same feeling of Obi-Wan or Luke Skywalker battling Darth Vader with a lightsaber. That's what Star Wars is. You know what I mean? That's that's what it is. And like the old movies, you know, the lightsaber scenes weren't like great by any stretch of the imagination. I think if you ranked like the lightsaber fight scenes, they'd probably fall towards the bottom of those rankings. I mean, the lightsaber, like Duel of the Fates in episode 1, you know, the 4th movie, episode 1, is fantastic. The lightsaber scene in Revenge of the Sith is fantastic. Even though some of the ones in the newer movies are like more aesthetically pleasing in terms of like actual action. But like there's a reason why not just us, right? Not just us, but ubiquitously, there's a reason why when people rank movie villains, Darth Vader is always going to be in the top 2. Right. So to
no matter what, too, I honestly think like I'll go the rest of my life thinking he is a top 2 villain for me.
So for them to build towards this, and we all knew it was coming to this, but for them to build towards this and then execute it in such a way that it felt satisfying.
Right.
Because we all knew, like, we know what's going to happen, right? We know what's going to happen. They're going to fight. And then they're going to go their separate ways because that's how it is when the movie starts. So the stakes aren't super high, but I felt like they did a good job of maybe not making it feel like there's risk involved, but that it felt important. And it felt like there was almost closure to the to their relationship, not to their relationship, but between Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship, as you said, whenever he makes the saying, and then this is spoilers, obviously. So, but you know, I would assume that you've watched this,
right?
Or you don't intend to if you're listening to this. But when he says, "Then my friend is truly dead. Goodbye, Darth." Right. Which is there's closure there. And I think that is something that was maybe lacking with Revenge of the Sith. And I think that this is the time period between the prequels and now, which aside from the animated stuff, we don't have anything in between there. Other than there's probably some books, I don't know, but
sure.
There's not, you know, there's not any other like movies, or I mean Rogue One, but that's so close to the beginning of New Hope that it's not really, you know what I mean? because there's 20 years in between. And I thought that at the 10-year mark, this did a really nice job of filling in the gaps. It showed you just how angry Vader is. It shows you just how powerful he is at this point. And it shows you how, Obi-Wan's starting to slip a little bit, as we kind of talk more about the series than just this episode. But, and it was cool to see the cameos that they brought in. And you wonder, to me, he cleans out the cave and then he takes off. And I know that both of them are already on the record saying they'd like for there to be a season 2, but I think there can't be a season 2 in the sense that this felt like a finality between these two characters. Yeah. And so I think that if there is a season 2, then Vader can't be involved. And I think, but at the same time, I would like to see more of what Vader was up to during this time period. It doesn't necessarily have to be with Obi-Wan. And I think that the scenes that we got with Hayden Christensen, like actually him, show that he's maybe more ready now to take on this role than he was at the time.
I think this does wonders for him. I as someone like, whatever, a lot of us have panned Hayden Christensen in this.
Yeah. Mannequin Skywalker.
It is what it is. It is what it is. I mean, he was a good looking guy doing something like this at this time. And, he just couldn't really do it. I mean, I think he even kind of admits to it. It was too much. It's too much. You're literally playing at that time, the most famous villain in the history of movies.
Yeah.
At that time. And you're playing that character and you have to go from being like righteous and good to following into this path of the dark side. And, whether the dark side's actually evil or not is always at that weird, thing. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's the balancing. It's the Thanos idea almost. And this is the thing is like, now he's, obviously it's been 20 years. And I was thinking about this when I was watching this today and I was like, boy, Hayden Christensen's really like doing a good job at this. Like when the mask is split off and the anger's showing, and it's like he isn't Anakin Skywalker anymore. He is Darth Vader, and it was cool. Like I guess there's people out there who criticize just for the sake of criticizing, and we're criticizing, but you know what I mean, negatively criticizing or not giving a positive. But for me, it was, what more do you want at this point? I mean, we can't. You and I have talked about this ad nauseum, that you can't bring back those first 3 movies. No. You just can't. Because we have both said Empire Strikes Back is one of our favorite movies of all time. Not just the best Star Wars movie, but one of the best movies of all time. Yeah. And it's like saying, well, how come they just don't make Goodfellas again? I don't want to sound like, a dickhead about it, but this is what people are kind of saying. And I know the stardom and being all this fanboy and stuff like this is, a big thing, but it's just like, we can't make these movies. Like, it's just, it happens every once in a while. That's why you should appreciate when it's so good and understand that actually it not being duplicated, it's actually a good thing. I really feel like that's where we're kind of losing our faith in maybe this or even other, like, I guess you and I have said maybe Endgame should have been it for Marvel, and maybe take 5 years off and start something new or something, because it's always going to have to hang around because of where it's at. But that's, I'm like kind of giving myself out of breath because I'm getting kind of angry, but it's just, there's only so many really good movies out there. Mm-hmm. And to say we need to go back to what they did with those first 3 movies, it's like, well, guess what? Those are still probably the best 3 sci-fi movies of the past 50 years. It's like, what do you want people to do? It's hard to do this.
Well,
it's hard to do this kind of thing. Like, that's my point. And that's why, like, making these TV series, I think, is actually more helpful than trying to make the movies. Mm-hmm.
The reality of it too is, like, The Force Awakens was so it got criticized for playing it too safe and being too close to A New Hope. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then when they went in a different direction for The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, The Last Jedi has great critical response, right? Yeah. And not so great fan response.
Right.
And then Rise of Skywalker has not so great critical response and better fan response. Not great, but better fan response.
Better.
It's just hard because I think that Star Wars is in a place where it's not like Marvel in the sense that you had the X-Men and the Spider-Man movies, but the MCU really started in 2008 with Iron Man.
Right.
And basically, if you bought in then, or the fact that it's recent enough that you can finally, like, you can get on board at any point, go back and watch those movies, whatever. It's just, I think the real difficulty here is that they took 20 years between the originals and the prequels, and then another 15 years between the prequels and the sequels, and you're trying to cater to 4 different generations of fans while bringing in new fans, right? While bringing in new fans and bringing in younger fans. And I think that the issue is that there's just a lot of issues. Is you have the original ones, which are, like you said, and I obviously agree, sci-fi masterpieces, but then the prequels, they got, well, now we have CGI, so we have to use this, and effects and things took a backseat to storytelling. And then with the sequels, it's like, okay, we're not going to go too heavy on the CGI, or we've got to perfect it now or whatever, but we need to try to make this like funny and like quote unquote woke to try to appeal to this generation of fans. And it's just, you're just never going to appeal to all the fans with every single property within this property at this time. So I think you just kind of have to shoot for the middle. And I think the best example of that is obviously The Mandalorian, but Rogue One. And I think that this series, getting back to Obi-Wan specifically, I think this series kind of, it's not as good as Mandalorian. It's not as good as Rogue One, but it's a lot better than everything else that's come.
Right.
Since that time. And so I think if people are really looking at this and saying, oh, this is trash, whatever, then that's just people dug into their heels about, I'm just not going to like anything that Disney does because they don't know what they're doing, without really even giving it a chance. Because there's some slow parts, especially in the beginning, some of the middle stuff. But I'm going to tell you what, man, that fights, that lightsaber scene between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi at the end of episode 6, or really the middle of episode 6.
Yeah.
That's the shit that Star Wars is made of. Yep. And if you don't understand that, then you're not a Star Wars fan, period.
When Obi-Wan comes back from underneath the rocks, and of course Darth Vader can feel it, and he can feel it and everything like that. And then Obi-Wan just comes at him full force. Like, you feel like this is, and the way it makes it look is it feels like it's Obi-Wan's last great fight. It does, because it's just like, I'm throwing everything I have at you with all the rocks and everything, and hitting you in the face because you're no longer Anakin. It was such a great scene. I 100% agree, Brent. I won't add more. Just, if you didn't like that and that didn't hit you in a way, then you actually don't like Star Wars.
I don't know what to tell you.
Right. There's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do, obviously, but there's nothing Disney can do to make you like Star Wars anymore. Like, you just have this thing stuck in your head where The Empire Strikes Back is obviously just, and like we said, it is the great movie, but like, well, we just can't, since we can't touch that, we can't make anything good anymore. It's like, no, you still can. It just isn't going to be The Empire Strikes Back, which both you and I, like I said, had it in our top 10 movies of all fucking time. That's the thing that drives me nuts, is like, most people have that movie in their top movies of all time and then be like, well, they can't make anything good anymore. It's like, good luck. Good luck.
Right. So score the season series, whatever.
I would give it just an 8.0. Just, I thought it was really good. And, sure, it had some flaws in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought the redemption arc too, with some certain characters and everything, helped. And the fact that you really do get to see the rage from Darth Vader develop, because you don't really see that in the movies. It's sort of funny.
No.
You don't see it.
He's already there.
Yeah. And even in the first three, the second three, but episodes 1, 2, and 3, it's like it builds up, and he's like, oh, he's evil now. But this was kind of a cool way to see it in a different way. I thought, and
then he has to let go, and that's the other thing, and if we're going this far, let's talk a little bit about the cameos. We get Emperor Palpatine, who basically says, look, you got to let it go or questions are going to be raised. Yeah. And he says he means nothing. Let him go. And then between that and then also Liam Neeson coming back.
That was cool.
I was pissed in a good way. I was pissed in a good way.
I know what you mean.
Because they let it go, man.
Yeah.
And I wanted it sooner. Excuse me. But to finally get it, it was a nice cherry on top.
Yeah, that really was.
Yeah. I think I give it an 8. I think that it's definitely flawed in some spaces, but I do think that the strengths are enough to overcome some of those weaknesses. Yeah,
for sure. 100%.
Moving on to episode 3 of Miss Marvel. Ahead of Amir's wedding, Kamala may face grave consequences due to a crucial decision that she makes. There's also the revelation that Cameron belongs to a family of jinn. That would be DJI Dolan. And that Kamala's friend Nakia was in fact elected to the mosque board. Before you jump in, I actually want to get this started, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, go ahead. Perfect.
So I made a point of it this week to put my phone down and focus on this show. And what happened when I did that and focus on the show and really tried to accept the show for what it was or what it is. And what I found out was that I do think there is some things to like here. It's not without flaws. And I'll get into that as we discuss the episode. It's not without flaws, but I think that both of us last week were on a bit of a standoffish point with this show that it's not for us, it's for younger people, whatever. And maybe it was just a case of this being a better episode too. But I found much more to like in this episode than I had in the first 2 episodes. And I think in large part just to the fact of, all right, I'm going to really focus in on this. And like I said, there was one flaw in particular that I'll talk about when we talk about the episode, but I said this last week, I really like Kamala. I think that that as a character, she's very charming. I like the actress. This is her first job, by the way. She'd never acted prior to this. I read that somewhere online, but I think that she's quite charming. Like I said last week, when it comes to her being a superhero, I love how comically unathletic she is.
Yes.
I think that's hilarious. And maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not intentional. I don't know. But I actually was quite taken by this episode, and I feel better about the show moving forward with a renewed level of excitement.
I also did the same thing, Brenton.
Oh, okay.
It's funny you said that. I said to myself, because I started watching it yesterday and I got a minute in and I was just like, I need to actually focus on this show. So I'm going to not watch it today. And literally because of our conversation last week, I just couldn't focus. I had not a lot going on because I'm home and I don't have a lot going on. Sometimes my mind races and I feel like I need to do other things. Yeah. So I was like, I'm just going to sit here tomorrow. I'm going to take Jane to work. I'm going to come back and it's going to be the first thing I do. So I'm drinking my coffee. And usually when I drink my coffee, I'm usually just kind of listening to podcasts or something. So I'm not really on my phone. Mm-hmm. I'm just my phone is obviously playing the podcast, but I was like, instead of a podcast, I'm going to watch this show.
Mm-hmm.
And I 100% agree with you. Whether or not I think I think this episode was just better. Yeah, I really do. The action and the color was way more emphasized in this episode too, which I think helps. Which obviously tells you it's geared for younger people just because there's splashier colors. But it seemed like this episode, to go back to Obi-Wan, is like this show that this actually matters in the greater scheme of what we're talking about than just
maybe.
I don't mean it just. What I mean is not just episode by episode, but like I think this show that this series actually evolves. It's 12 episodes, right?
11.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it shows that like there is something behind all this. Is basically what I mean. Not necessarily that it relates into the greater Marvel, the MCU.
Yeah.
But just that there's a greater Ms. Marvel universe. And And I think that was important to kind of showcase that like, oh, there's something bigger than just what we realized in those first 2 episodes.
Yeah. I'm struggling with the names. And that's probably just me being a white guy thing. I'm going to be honest. Like
it happens. I mean,
I'm having a hard time keeping track of, especially some of the older characters, because it's like, who's she? Is she an aunt, or is that like grandma or great grandma's nephew's niece? And so there's that. I do think the episodes are still a little bit on the long side.
They are. Yeah, I agree.
Is this only 6? Because credited, it's only 6 actually. Hang on, let me take a look. I thought it was 11. How many episodes is Miss Marvel? Oh, it is only 6. I am wrong.
Okay.
I thought
either way,
I thought somewhere I read that it was 11. Maybe it's
either way. It's still just showing that it's there's more out there.
Yeah.
Than what we originally thought.
So, and maybe it makes a little bit more sense now, knowing that we're only working with 6 episodes instead of 11. But I do think the episodes are still a bit long.
Yeah, I agree.
But then in this particular episode this week, I had a pretty big issue in terms of it being a flaw for me, was the fact that at the beginning of the episode, she's explained by this group of jinn what they are and what they need. And Cameron's like a kid of this dimension who's helping them, etc. So she's going to help them. She agrees to help them. And then in the middle of the episode, Bruno explains, well, it's possible, but it could be very dangerous. So she says, I'm going to help you. I just need more time. It could be very dangerous. And then in the flip of a switch, the people who are helping her are now the bad guys. Like,
right.
No, there's no build up to it.
That was weird.
I also don't understand how she and Bruno escaped the hotel without the department of whatever they're called, damage control, seeing them, because they were just there, like on the floor, and the damage control comes in and like sees all the bad guys and they're like, lock them up. And then there's just 2 kids and one of them's clearly enhanced and they're just like, don't pay attention to those 2.
Don't worry about it.
So see that little guy over there? We don't worry about that little guy over there. But it was kind of weird, like just how rushed it was. And then Cameron has decided that he likes this, kind of like unathletic, nerdy girl, and he's ready to go to bat for her with his family, or, quote unquote family, whatever. But it all felt very rushed. I will say I love the Bollywood scene, obviously. I think that was essential.
So good.
I thought it was awesome. But I just felt like things are maybe coming into focus a little bit more here than they were in the last episode. And I think that they need to do a better job of how they manage the time that they're given. I mean, obviously, this has already happened and they've already cut and edited it, everything. So I'm, might as well talk to a wall, but I'm hopeful that they're maybe a little bit better with how they manage their time in the next 3 episodes, as far as not wasting time or pacing things weirdly. Because I feel like if you're going to reveal that these people are like helpful, and then we get the story from her dad to Bruno in the convenience store, and he's like, oh, never heard that one before. And it's like, well, now he knows they're bad, but he doesn't say anything.
Right.
So I just felt like it was really strangely paced. And I think that what they should have done is reveal these people. Here's their story. Okay, I'm going to help you, whatever. And then leave their heel turn until next episode. I think that would have made more sense from a pacing standpoint. But I still, despite that, what I perceived to be a very glaring flaw in this particular episode, found it far more interesting. And, I'm more on board than I was last week. Because last week I was almost like, maybe we just stop watching this. But we do Marvel, so that wasn't going to happen.
Right. No, I agree. I'm definitely way more invested in it. I wouldn't necessarily be like excited, but I'm interested in what happens next. Your drink is clear because of the green screen.
Because of the green cup, yeah.
Like it. I'm definitely way more interested in it now than I was, for sure.
Yeah. So hopefully it continues to evolve and, kind of build towards paying off what was built in this episode.
So, right. 100%.
Very good. We're going to move to our weekly movie review from director Joseph Kosinski, who did Top Gun. Yes. Is that accurate? No. Top Gun Maverick, wasn't he? Did you do that?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. I was like the original Top Gun. I was like,
no, Maverick. Yeah,
Maverick. Yeah.
And he's going to be doing an F8 or not an F18, a Formula One movie. In which they use many of the same practical effects. Yes. So Joseph Kosinski, director, Spiderhead. In the near future, convicts are offered the chance to volunteer as medical subjects to shorten their sentence. One such subject for a new drug capable of generating feelings of love begins questioning the reality of his emotions. Starring Chris Hemsworth, Miles Turner, Journey Smollett, and Mark Paguio. Spiderhead. Thoughts?
So based off George Saunders' story in the New Yorker, it was weird to see like New Yorker as a production company on this, where Jane and I were watching it like, this is weird, and then you realize because it was George Saunders. It was a short story from George Saunders, and I read what the George Saunders story was about, and read kind of like it sounds weird. It was a long synopsis of the George Saunders. It felt like I was reading the short story essentially. The short story is different than the movie, but it holds for the most part fairly the same. I thought this movie was very weird, and it was cool seeing. To me, it was cool seeing Chris Hemsworth is not a hero.
Yeah.
And kind of like, for me, chewing on the scenery about it. Like, just enjoying this idea that I'm not Thor, or I'm not, saving anyone in this particular case. Although he thought he was saving humanity, he wasn't actually saving anyone. It's a weird way to put things. Like, you're saving humanity, but you're not saving anyone. And I thought that was well done. I just like Miles Teller at this point. I've liked Miles Teller for a while, so there's nothing on that end. I thought like the side storylines were a little off, and I didn't care so much about. I like the way it ends with Miles Teller and Smollett's character,
Lizzie.
Lizzie getting together. I didn't really care so much about that. I really cared more about what the actual main plot line was and what this Spiderhead, place is all about. I thought that was cool. And if it would have focused more on that, I would have definitely liked it way more. I still enjoyed this movie fine. I mean, to me, it was very well paced. It wasn't a long movie. It's an hour and 45 minutes or something too. So there's nothing wrong with that end of pacing. It was just one of those things where like they tried to bring in side stuff, which I understand. But this movie is definitely one of those movies. It's like if you just focus the task at hand, I think you actually do better. But maybe then it's not a movie. It's just it is what it is at that point. So I like it. I thought the performances were all pretty solid. Like I said, I liked Chris Hemsworth being a villain and kind of enjoying it. Yeah, and then Miles Teller actually is like not a good person.
Right.
But you have to kind of root for that character.
Yeah, it's runtime without runtime without credits. It says on its Wikipedia is 107 minutes. So yeah, just shy of 2 hours. I like Hemsworth being a villain and also not using physicality to be a villain.
Right.
Because obviously Chris Hemsworth elicits thoughts of, he's Thor. He's going to play Hulk Hogan. He's a big dude. You know what I mean? He's a big physical guy. He's a physical style actor. And to see him just kind of like be just sort of a douchebag was really kind of refreshing.
It's brains and not brawn. It's literally he's very smart, and that's kind of what it was putting on to.
So the thing that I thought about this movie was I felt like it was the sum was not as great as its parts. And what I mean by that was I thought Hemsworth's role and the way he portrayed that character was, as I said, very refreshing. I thought Miles Teller was fine as the character that he was, but the movie itself was like, it was like, oh, this feels like next or Ex Machina, except if it wasn't good. And that's kind of like the overall vibe that I got was like, I don't hate this, but I don't like it.
Okay.
I don't think it's good, but I don't think it's bad. And that's where I was kind of like, okay, Hemsworth is kind of like, he's a douchebag, kind of like Oscar Isaac's character in Ex Machina, but he's not as much of a douchebag. And the Miles Teller character was a lot of things that character was, but not to the same level. And that's what I just kept going back to. I was like, I know it's different. It's like, it's these behavioral drugs, which, by the way, the name Dark and Phlox was ridiculous. But overall, that's the vibe that I got. I was like, oh, this is like great value Ex Machina.
Well, isn't that, and that sound weird, isn't that just Netflix produced movies are always just great value?
Yeah, like whatever. The generic version of.
Yeah, they're
whatever.
Not to like, because we watch many and I've enjoyed Netflix movies, but they are the great value where it's like it still gets your attention.
Right.
You just don't want these movies to be 3 hours long. I mean, that's kind of the thing too. It's like, as long as they can keep them under 2 hours, it's like, it's entertaining enough.
Right.
And yeah, they're not winning any awards. And there have been Netflix movies that have won awards. And I'm not saying that, but like for the most part, it is a great value representation of something, because Ex Machina is like one of those really slick movies. Like, just so perfectly well done. And I've probably seen it 5 times now. And every time I'm like, that movie is awesome.
Yeah, Alex Garland, Men's supposed to be really good too.
You tore her apart. Watch me tear this fucking dance floor up.
Yeah. Oh my god. Oscar Isaac's so good in that movie. That whole movie. It's great and terrifying just for different reasons. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I was at with this. I was like, I don't like what's the most average score you can give something, a movie?
6.5
to show that it's not bad, but it's not good. 6.5. That's what I think would land on this.
And I would give it a 7. I was like, I didn't think much more than you did. I think for me, I enjoyed the idea of like Chris Hemsworth just, and you mentioned the non-physical, but being a douchebag. Yeah. And Thor is kind of a douchebag. I know that sounds weird to say, but it's like he's
but
still a
not
hero
like the same
this
way that like Doctor Strange or
no,
Iron Man.
right. And but in this way, it's like he's this douchebag who doesn't care about anything, and it's just so single mindset. I think the only thing that was really missing is I wish there was some sort of like weird like workout scene with him. I think we did need. I know that sounds weird, but it's just like it is still Chris Hemsworth, and I think I know that sounds. Just, I think you need to do something like that where he just like is getting into it. Like that would have been funny. It just would have been funny.
Like in a way though, too, I feel like it would have fit the character. I mean, at the very beginning, he's on the exercise bike or whatever. But I loved how I will say, Hemsworth was my favorite part of this movie, like the whole way through. Sure. And like when the chick kills herself, like stabs herself in the neck and bleeds out. I love how like fake calm he is.
Yeah.
Like that really, to me, that really sold just like how much of a scumbag this character was. He's just like, it's going to be all right. It's going to be great.
It's fine. Did you know what I said when that happened? I was just like, dude, you got a fucking dart in your neck.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you gave it a 6.5. I gave it a 7. I think it's fair. I think that's like kind of the ratings for this movie. I think it's somewhere around there.
No, it's doing real bad.
Is it really? I've read reviews. I didn't look at Rotten Tomatoes for it.
Yeah, RT had it critically in the. I think I don't have that tab up anymore. Do I?
Let's see.
No, it's Yeah, no, it was.
You were so harsh. I just don't know.
Well, it wasn't that great.
It wasn't that great, but I just like what.
Okay, here we go. I was gonna say I had it,
which we've also said RT is not really the appropriate way to grade movies.
Yeah, but it gives you a starting point, you know, to start to talk about some of these things. 42 critical, 31 audience. And
wow.
What to know, critics consensus, Spiderhead's top shelf cast and well-written source material are almost enough to compensate for its frequent failure to live up to its potential. So
I gotta read the George Saunders short story about it. I think it'll be fun.
Okay. You got a fucking dart in your neck.
That's what I said.
Is that from old school or
that's from old school?
Okay.
Yeah. Fucking dart in your neck. That's just one of my favorite things of all time. So
yeah,
I absolutely love it.
Wow. Oh, man, I haven't watched that movie forever.
I haven't either. Yep, ready to rock and roll.
So we have a different approach here for this next thing. Greg is going to do a solo review of Cha-Cha Real Smooth, a Sundance winner on Apple TV Plus, starring Dakota Johnson and Cooper Raiff. I'm going to turn my mic off. That's how serious this is going to be.
Whoa.
So have at it, boss.
All right. So I had a written review, written explanation of what the movie is, but the Netflix one is similar to what I have. So it's just going to be easier to read this. So fresh out of college, without a clear life path going forward, 22-year-old Andrew is stuck back at home with his family in New Jersey. But if there's one thing that belongs on his non-existent resume, it's how to get a party started, which lands him the perfect job, motivational dancing at the bar and bat mitzvahs for his younger brother's classmates. When Andrew befriends a local mom, Domino, and her daughter, Lola, he discovers a future he wants, even if it might not be his own. Cooper Raiff writes, directs, and stars alongside Dakota Johnson, Brad Garrett, Leslie Mann, and newcomers Vanessa Burghardt and Evan Asson in this tale of unconventional love that brims with emotional honesty. So Cooper Raiff plays Andrew, and like it says, fresh out of college. The thing I will say about that is that Andrew is 27 and is bearded. So when I was fresh out of college, I looked like I was 13. And I had people come up to me literally when I was working at the newspaper and say, "Are you writing for the high school newspaper? That's cute." So that was a little tough for me to like deal with. I think he maybe should have shaved his beard or something. His acting is a little off, but the thing that I will say that I really, really enjoy about this movie is I think Dakota Johnson is an absolute star. watched her in The Lost Daughter, and that was the movie Olivia Colman was nominated for. Elena Ferrante, one of my favorite art authors, wrote that book. I feel like this sounds weird, but I feel like she kind of lost her time with doing excuse me, doing movies initially appeal to like other people, and then she came back and she's doing movies that kind of have more of like a sentimental feeling. And when you go from those gray movies to doing something like this, is a totally different switch. I really think that she is a terrific actress. She carried this movie for me. She is the emotional part of it. She's the sensical part of it, because she, I think in real life is 33 or 34. And I think that's the character age that she's actually playing in this movie. It's never mentioned, but you know that she's older than Andrew. And then her daughter, who has autism, is very cool. And Andrew helps break her out of this shell where she gets on the dance floor. And the one thing, and Brenton would know this, I know he's not chiming in with the mic, but I wish that I could have been paid to help people dance at parties at that age, because that was my thing. If I was going to a wedding or anything, I was ready to just hit the dance floor and get people going. I remember going to a wedding in Pittsburgh with my friend Carrie, and Matt Adams, who's been on this show, was there with me, and I was trying to get everybody on the dance floor. It was rough. It was weird seeing people, our age, 23, 24, not jumping out on the dance floor. And that was like, man, I wish I could have got paid to do that. So I really enjoyed the plot line. Obviously, Leslie Mann is always great. I mean, there's just always something she brings. Brad Garrett as stepdad Greg, which I enjoyed that, because there's a lot of lines that say Greg. And I always hope that other people watch these movies and then present those lines to me. Like, I have nipples, Greg, can you milk me? And so something I've always enjoyed was something where my name is mentioned. Brent doesn't really have that, because he's a Brent where he has to always be on. So, but
people can't get my name right. They can't get it right. It's terrible.
To digress about this movie, it does start out with him, doing this, and he meets Dakota Johnson's character, Domino, and he finds out that she's actually engaged. And Andrew has a really good relationship with Domino and with Lola, the daughter. Really nice relationship. I mean, there's parts where it becomes more than just friends, but you never really feel like it should. And she makes sure that it doesn't. And then the fiance gets involved, and there's a little bit of, a bustle back and forth, but it's nothing crazy. Yet what ends up happening is, I think, what is real life stuff, jumping into spoilers, is that she's like, you are young and you need to live your 20s. I didn't get to do that because I had Lola, and Lola's a teenager at this point in this movie. And it's like, you need to enjoy your 20s. You need to have this. I'm getting married. And her initial husband, who she had Lola with, left. He just left the scene. And she goes through some other things. And I think that was the thing that kind of made this movie, I think, good to me, and the storyline good. It was sometimes the best things that happen to you. You sometimes meet people for their, the right reasons, even if they're not the right people for you in this life. He talks about soulmates and things like this, Andrew does. And I think Domino was a soulmate for him, in a sense of like, she had to guide him on a different path. It wasn't for her to be in this. So for me, it held up really well. I think Dakota Johnson stole the show in this movie. I just think she's great. I really do. I think she has a good presence. She's a great actress. And then having Leslie Mann as a side character, having Brad Garrett as a side character, is a great fight scene with kids and the parents. And it's just really funny. This movie definitely weighs more funny than heavy, and then kind of balances itself out at the end. I would personally give this movie probably a 7, just straight up 7. There were definitely flaws in this movie, but I think because Dakota Johnson's so strong in this movie, and because I think the storyline was so well done, it really holds up well for me. Cooper Raiff, I've heard things about him being like the next big like thing in directing and whatever. he probably wants to stay more behind the camera than in front of it. His acting's not great, and that could be because she was just so good in this movie. But I think if he went more behind the scenes and less in front, it'd be better for him. So that's my review. I think people should check it out. I definitely, have a recommendation. It's a fun movie. If you like dance scenes, if you just like a little fun, I really can't recommend it enough on that end. It's not the greatest thing ever, but it is a fun movie, and it's a short movie too. It's an hour and 47 minutes. So it's still something you can fit in, and you can pretty much watch with most of your family. It says rated R, but I think you can watch that with your teenagers.
Do you have any other media recommendations?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, we'll get right into it. Media recommendations for me. Iron Chef is back, and it's on Netflix, and oh boy, it's good. I don't know. Did you watch Netflix? Did you watch Iron Chef, Brenton, back in the day?
Not really. No, a little bit.
I mean, I loved it back in the day, and it's just you got the main players back with the chairman and Alton Brown, and then other people are now involved. It's different Iron Chefs, but it's still really fun. It's probably more fun now because of the production level with Netflix. So I really like that. And then I sent this to you and Ty earlier, the Sports Illustrated article on pickleball. I can't recommend that enough. It's absolutely bonkers. It's the last 9 pages of the actual physical Sports Illustrated issue. It's crazy. There are 2 leagues. They were talking about putting in 2 Hall of Fames. This thing really just existed 4 years ago. It's absolutely bonkers, run by billionaires. And I love stuff like that. So the Sports Illustrated article on pickleball, you can find it online. But if you have the physical copy of Sports Illustrated, I can't recommend that enough. And it was a good edition of Sports Illustrated overall, but this was like, wow, what a way to end it. It just this full-on article about pickleball.
Nice. I don't really have anything because I've been real tired, so I'm gonna pass on your recommendations. But you can find the BXG podcast on podcast services around the globe: Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google, and so on, at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every Friday and Monday, 6 a.m. Pacific, 4 a.m. Hawaiian.
Aloha.
Catch us on social media: facebook.com/BXG Podcast, Instagram at BXG Podcast, Twitter at BXG Podcast. Our individual handles at Alpha Donut Guy, at GT Phils, or Greg T Phils, or GT Phil Sutton, or whatever. This fucking guy.
Fine. Hey, when your account gets stolen, you gotta make up.
Take care, friends. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
All that stuff.
And have a great weekend.
Thanks. Tell your mothers.
Tell your mothers. Tell your brothers too.